Never let your knees travel past your toes when you squat. Come on, all the biggest muscles are on the back of your legs, so you may as well sit back and use them. You've heard of him before. He's the knees over toes guy. I'm fortunate to call Ben Patrick a friend and a peer. But 2 years ago, when I first heard of him, he was just someone I admired and I followed closely. I've learned a ton from Ben, and his training approach and friendship has helped me improve my own functional bodybuilding training methodology. Today, I'm going to share with you the top 2 things to know about the knees over toes method and philosophy, and how they can help you look good and move well too. Before I dive in, here's a little history of why this topic and this movement captivated me so much. Even before knees over toes became the talk of the fitness world, I took issue with the concept of keeping the knees back when we squat. Every time I tried to squat like this, it was super awkward. There seemed to be no way, no conceivable way, to keep my torso upright and achieve this vertical shin concept. It just didn't make sense, but of course, industry experts that I looked up to said it was right, so I kept trying. For about 3 of the first years that I was training in CrossFit and CrossFit Sport, I struggled with knee pain in and around a former injury that I had. My knee would flare up every so often for seemingly no reason. So, over time, I abandoned the concept of trying to keep my knees back. Allowing my knees to track forward as I squatted not only felt better on my knees, but it also ended up feeling better on my back. However, what did linger in my mind was this preoccupation with the concept of building a strong posterior chain. Well, in 2017, after I retired from the sport of CrossFit, I started dragging sleds in my training. I was doing backward sled drags, and I do recall thinking, man, this is the best quad pump that I have gotten since my leg extension days at the Globo Gym. I hadn't done a quad-focused exercise since those bodybuilding days, and it felt so good. My knees felt amazing, but of course, I crept back to my posterior chain bias and I left the sled dragging behind. Then it was 2020. Ben Patrick showed up on my Instagram feed, backwards dragging a sled and showing his other methods. I was instantly hooked on his content. He was speaking a language that touched on my decade-long intuitive feeling. It was like, how did I not see this earlier? But it often takes a great teacher to come along in order to help us open our eyes to the obvious. He just spoke the right language at the right time for me. So I did what I always do when I find a teacher that I resonate with. I jumped headfirst into practicing his methods. I purchased his program, I started doing all the training, and I continued to listen to every bit of content that he produced. Now it's almost 2 years later, and I still incorporate many aspects of his methods into my functional bodybuilding approach. So here are the top 2 lessons that I've taken with me from ATG into my ongoing FBB pursuits. Number 1, regress to progress. Regression is often the only way that you're going to be able to move forward in your fitness. Ben stresses this so much in his program. All of his programs are built on a foundation of great movement first, then intensity second. Everything regresses down to the most simple form that anyone can do. Progress does not come from doing the hardest version of something, but rather from doing the most appropriately scaled version for your current skill level. If it's too easy, no results. If it's too hard, you get injured or you'll find pain. But if it's just right, that is where growth happens. I learned this very specifically with my ATG split squat. I took it all the way down to 0 first, doing the most basic regressions that he coached. I lowered the weight, and I worked hard to achieve perfect movement, focusing diligently on form for months. The common perception is that if you regress, you will lose your strength and your muscles will wither away. But what actually happens is that your tendons and ligaments get stronger. Your body positions become more efficient. the balance of strength in your joints from back to front and side to side improves. You begin to unlock access to new muscles and strength that you've never had before. And you will likely have fewer injuries that end up sidelining your training, and therefore you get to stay in the game longer and more consistently. As I said, I have applied this in my own training to the split squat, but also to areas like my double-legged squat and pressing movements. I took specific periods of time to focus on squats and split squats so that I could achieve maximal knee flexion. Even if this meant having to use assistance, elevating my heels significantly, lowering weight on my back squats and front squats, and moving much slower than I had ever before. On my pressing movements, I made an effort to maximize my shoulder extension and flexion. I let my shoulder blades move and slide without being so rigid. And in order to accomplish this, I had to lower my weights and I had to change some of my movement patterns. Maybe you love pushing weights. Maybe you love pushing heavy weights. But if you love pushing weights hard out of fear of losing the look that you have, just consider how much longer you'll be able to keep a great physique if you can resolve your current pain or prevent it from forming in the first place. Consider how much stronger you'll be by stabilizing your joints. And I can also attest that bringing more small muscle groups into my lifts by improving strength through a full range of motion also added to both upper and lower body aesthetic results. Regression applies to all aspects of fitness. At Functional Bodybuilding, we prioritize that in our conditioning work, our strength work, our skill work, and in movements. We aim to teach our athletes exactly what it means to find their own sweet spot of quality and intensity. Lesson number 2 from ATG to FBB, prioritize joint-specific strength. This approach to strength building is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than movement pattern strength. Here's 2 ways of thinking about strength. The first one would be build a stronger squat, build a stronger bench press. Another way to think about strength would be build stronger knees, build stronger ankles, build stronger shoulders. Movement pattern approach, joint-specific approach. For a long time, I have biased a movement pattern focus in my strength training, and I still find that this is a valuable way of looking at how to construct training so that you spread work out around the body evenly, you don't overtrain specific areas, and you can create very easy to follow and practical training schedules for clients. But what I have learned is that we also need to be looking at joint-specific strength. Yeah, I was conditioned as a coach to look at global patterns of movement and focus on building those. Looking at strength in specific joints, though, helped me to uncover 2 of my biggest areas of opportunity for better performance. Number 1 was my knee flexion. Number 2 was my ankle dorsiflexion. When I was introduced to the Nordic hamstring curl, I found out that my knee flexion was extremely weak. Also, when I was introduced to the tibialis raise, I found out that my ankle dorsiflexion was very weak. These 2 areas had been missing from my training for far too long. Yeah, I do lots of hamstring work with RDLs and deadlifts, but I rarely did anything that focused specifically on knee flexion. I also push a lot through the ground with Olympic lifting, with jumping, with double unders. So I do work my plantar flexion often in my calf muscles, but I rarely did anything to train the front of my shins and dorsiflexion. Ben's ATG approach to training really highlighted these strength deficiencies for myself. By implementing regular work with the Nordic hamstring curl and with the tib raise every week, I found new strength and balance in my ankles and my knees. My aches and pains in my lower leg have been dramatically reduced, and I feel much more stable in my lower body in all movement patterns that I perform. Look, Knees Over Toes is a great name. It captures the attention and it speaks specifically to the area of the body that Ben struggled with more in his life than any other. He overcame terrible knees to develop a very elegant training system. The reality is that ATG principles apply to the entire body, not just the knees. As an example, we can apply the same principles to the shoulders. Some of the ways that we do this in functional bodybuilding are as follows. We prioritize range of motion and strength in the same movements by choosing movements like dips, dumbbell benches, and parallel push-ups, where we really look at getting full shoulder flexion and extension. We practice this idea of structural balance of joints with upper body movements as well. We perform dumbbell elbowing rows, we perform ring face pulls to train the shoulder in various ways. And finally, just like Ben does, unilateral work is extremely important in the upper body too. Single arm pressing, single arm pulling, offset pull-ups. This way we can balance right to left in our upper body. Hey, I hope you found this video useful. A final thought that I have is to never stop learning. I took a chance and jumped into work with Ben. It helped me grow in more ways than I could possibly describe in this video. While I wish there was a simple recipe that everyone could follow to find that sweet spot of quality movement and intense effort, it just doesn't exist. You have to learn what feels right and what feels wrong. You have to have coaches watch your movement and give you feedback. And you have to watch yourself and reflect on your own progress and training. And this is why we believe being a thinking athlete is so important. At the end of the day, you know yourself better than anyone else and have the tools inside of you to guide yourself to best practices for a long life of movement. I'm proud to share these lessons that I've learned from ATG with you right here. I'm also proud to share those lessons through my functional bodybuilding Persist training program, and to also provide opportunities for you to learn there as well. If you want to build a great physique and improve your movement for life, then come give functional bodybuilding a try for 2 weeks, all for free. Click the link in the description below and join Persist. You'll get the best of the look good, move well philosophy and also reap the benefits of these 2 valuable lessons that I've learned over the past 2 years. Until then, take care. See you next time.